Great Transition Reports, bringing you reports from the movement for a better tomorrow. It's 1600 GMT on December 18th, 2030. And now to Ben Jackson in Gaborone, Botswana.
Here in Gaborone, Botswana, the UN Conference of the Parties to the Copenhagen Accords is now in its 7th day. Today we mark the anniversary of the 2009 Copenhagen Protocol, when, in the wake of the devastation of Shanghai by Super Typhoon Haishen, the world's nations forged a landmark grand bargain to combat climate change. The 2009 Copenhagen Protocol combined ambitious targets for greenhouse gas reductions worldwide with debt forgiveness programs to assist developing nations in transitioning to a less carbon-intensive development. However, much work remains to be done. It has been clear ever since the late teens that the market forces conventional policy has relied on in the past are not sufficient to meet the scale of today's challenges. Climate change continues to outpace worst-case scientific models. Thus, the more fundamental policy reforms being drafted in Gaborone. The new protocols will for the first time formally include not just nation-states, but also the increasing number of quasi-national entities and autonomous zones, as well as the global citizens movement that continues to lead the charge for substantive policy reform on the planetary stage. Delegates expect stricter greenhouse gas reduction goals, along with steps to deliver on the promise of development rights that the World Court upheld last year. However, many are waiting to see what India will do, given the crisis in South Asia. For more on that, we turn to Emma Foster Nair in New Delhi.
The situation on the ground here has been rapidly changing. With each passing day, the water crisis grows more severe. Due to the glacial recession, the Ganges River and its tributaries have been dry since the last monsoon rains in October. This is the third winter the river has been without water. Not only is the loss of northern India's main water source an economic and human health crisis, but the dry riverbed of the sacred Ganges at Varanasi has created a religious crisis for Hindus. The presence of up to 1 million Bangladeshi refugees from last summer's floods has only added to the strain on this already parched region. Wild rumours that Bangladeshi Muslims have diverted what remains of the river have sparked riots by Hindu nationalists, resulting in thousands of dead refugees. Riding this wave of anger and despair, the ultra-right-wing Vatavaran Hindu Parishad party carried a slim majority in the last election, making the party's leader, Kamendra Kataria, the new prime minister. In order to prevent social breakdown, Kataria has postponed elections, initiated curfews and rationing, and introduced laws requiring the registration of all people of Bangladeshi origin in India. Meanwhile, we are trying to verify cell phone vidcasts that purport to show fighting between Indian and Bangladeshi troops on the border. We'll keep you posted on this developing situation.
Oliver Ye follows up from Sydney. The authoritarian response to environmental crisis is not unique to India. Elements of this fortress world model can also be seen in the Russian Corporate Federation, and most memorably, in the aborted conspiracy to take over the UN by the so-called Alliance for Global Salvation in 2015. According to a new report released today by the Institute for Economic and Ecological Governance, a VBO based here in Sydney, the world is at a crossroads. Director Dylan Smith. Traditional governance structures are simply not sufficient to meet today's challenges. We have tried both relying on market forces and enacting deeper policy reform. Now we face a choice. If left unresolved, ecological crises will lead more regions to either social breakdown or fortress world governance structures and environmental apartheid. However, IEG remains convinced that democracy and the planet can both be saved. If we choose to rise to the challenge as a united global community, a great transition to a new sustainability is possible. We have identified in our report 3 emerging models of economic governance, which we have nicknamed Algoria, Ecodemia, and Arcadia, that highlight alternative pathways in such a transition. We see no reason why these could not coexist in a diverse, more resilient world. GTR has compiled dispatches from 3 such examples. Sophia Cruz reports the Agora case study of Brazil.
As nations have recognized the importance of environmental protection and a broad safety net for national stability, The basic features of social democracy have become common in most democratic nations, while discarding the profligate consumption that was omnipresent at the turn of the century. One nation that has been leading the way is Brazil. This year, Brazil made waves when their Ministry for Sustainable Development announced that due to the undervaluing of natural and social resources, the government would no longer rely on GDP as a measure of progress, but would instead concentrate on well-being and social and ecological resilience. An emphasis on resilience and regionalization, local food and fuel, for example, has been growing worldwide since 2010. Brazil has also made great strides in gender and racial equity. Attention is focused on the December 1st election of Vitória Neves, when for the first time a woman was elevated to the presidency. But it is the push for work time reductions and the improved social services, such as universal health care, education, child care, and net access, that created the gender equity in society that made this change possible.
Barack Lawrence reports from Detroit. The People's Democracy of Michigan in the United States of America perhaps best represents the ecodemia model. The windmill and electric car factories of this industrial region are now entirely worker-owned and operated. Workers each have an equal vote in the company, electing a workers' council to run the firm day to day, but remaining engaged in decision-making through weekly V.1.0 union halls. Despite what libertarians claimed, greater democracy has not led these companies into bankruptcy. On the contrary, since workers receive a defined share of the enterprise's net profit in place of a salary, democratic workplaces have proven to be highly efficient and reliable. Under the leadership of the popular Working Families Party, Michigan has become the envy of its neighbors for its resurgent economy, fueled by wind turbines and liquid batteries, along with its strong social safety net. However, this has also made the state a prime destination for migrants from the Great Plains, which has been transformed by drought into a vast desert. The integration of these immigrants poses an ongoing challenge, one that has forced the WFP to scale back its plans for full employment. Booby Davies checks in from Totnes, England.
Since commencing on its transition town Totnes plan for local resiliency in 2007, this quiet town of 11,000 on the banks of the River Dart has remained a prime example of the small is beautiful paradigm, and a mecca for the devotees of what the IEEG terms the Arcadia model. Though the decline in world oil supply has proved to be less of a society-destroying disruption than some had feared, Totnes' energy descent action plan was nonetheless successful in riding out the repeated oil shocks of the teens without much incident. Totnes is now an autonomous town within the United Kingdom, where only the Totnes pound is the main legal tender, and governance is by direct democracy. The town's ample organic farmland has made it almost entirely self-sufficient when it comes to basic necessities. Windmills are visible all over town, and both the windmills and the town's renowned folk art bring in substantial trade. The town also is home to over 15 V.1.0s, which keep citizens actively engaged with the ongoing global citizens movement.